It's finally here, you guys. The video I've been promising you for weeks now that you've been asking about has finally arrived. WillFoxification's top 10 films of 2016. So before we start, I want to say that 2016 was actually a really great year for film. This list was pretty difficult for me to make because there were a lot of films that could have been put in my top 10, but just barely missed the cut. Because when you have so many well-done films to choose from, you're kind of splitting hairs when you're narrowing it down to the best 10. Two disclaimers before we start though. The first being that I tried to see every movie I possibly could, but obviously some with smaller releases I may not have been able to actually find, so just bear that in mind. And two, I tried to approach this by figuring out which films resonated with me the most, which films still to this very day have left a lasting impression on me in some way, shape, or form. That was certainly a key factor in making this list. But with that said, let's go ahead and kick this thing off with my number 10 film of 2016, Fences. So Fences was such a great film because it felt very unique to me simply due to the fact that it's a story that's told in a very confined space. The story takes place in 1950s Pittsburgh and follows the ups and downs of the Maxon family, and most of the scenes take place inside their home or not too far outside of it. You have a core cast of roughly 6 characters, and the story is told almost entirely through these characters' conversations with one another. Now when you realize this film is written by August Wilson and based on his recurring play, also called Fences, you can totally see why the filmmakers decided to take the less is more approach and build the story solely around the characters and their experiences, which have shaped who they are as people. And due to this choice, there is a pretty heavy burden placed on the actors cast in this film, and boy do every single one of them deliver at a high level. Denzel Washington and Viola Davis lead the way with Oscar-worthy performances, for which I'm confident they'll both get nominated in their respective category. Denzel's character Troy is definitely the main focus of the film because he's the head of the household and the one who honestly causes the most friction. The performance that Denzel Washington delivers in Fences is nothing short of amazing, and honestly I think it's the best of his career. The character of Troy Maxon is pretty divisive by his very nature. In some scenes you'll hate him, and other scenes you'll empathize with him, and that's just great acting from a man who's easily one of the best in the game right now. And let's not forget, he directed the film too. And Viola Davis delivers one of the best performances of her career as well, because Rose is almost the opposite to Troy in a lot of ways, and the way the two interacted on screen was nothing short of great. Viola Davis showed some serious range in Fences, and she and Denzel Washington basically put this film on their back and carried it to greatness. But something else Fences offers that I didn't personally expect at all was a nice balance between drama and comedy. There's several conversations that take place that are really just hilarious. Most of the comedy in this film is delivered by Stephen McKinley Henderson and McKelty Williamson, and these two are both very good in this film. But overall, Fences is a very well done film that builds a solid foundation on its strong acting performances, light touches of comedy, and very well written dialogue. Fences performed pretty well at the box office with a total domestic gross of roughly $37 million on a $27 million budget. Okay, so moving on to my number 9 film of 2016, Zootopia. So to be honest, I didn't even see Zootopia in theaters when it was released in March. I wasn't doing movie reviews until May, so crazy enough, I didn't actually see this one until about a week ago or so. And I knew this film had gotten insanely good reviews from a lot of critics, and I actually had a lot of close friends and family members that were telling me I needed to watch it. Well, when I realized it was on Netflix, I took them up on their advice, and I was pretty damn impressed with how good it was. Now to be honest, there's not much about Zootopia that's all that new or groundbreaking, but what it does with the standard animated kids film formula is incredibly impressive, because it takes everything that you expect out of an animated kids film and delivers it to you in a way that somehow feels fresh. Disney managed yet again to create another world with stunning animation that feels lively and fun and exciting, and populated it with characters that inhabit the world with charisma and energy. Zootopia operates like your standard buddy adventure film, and then it takes two very different characters and aligns their interests. The two main characters of this film, Judy Hopps and Nick Wilde, are two of the most likable and fun characters that Disney has ever created, and these two should serve as the shining example for how you create and develop quality characters in an animated kids film. What I particularly liked about these two is how different they are and how well they play off one another, and a big portion of the credit for that goes to the voice actors in Jennifer Goodwin and Jason Bateman, who deliver fantastic performances and give their characters such a strong identity through voice alone. In any buddy adventure film like this one, if you don't love the two lead characters, the film's gonna suffer, and Zootopia never suffers because their two lead characters are so much fun. Now, something about Zootopia that completely surprised me was how hilarious it is. To be honest, I don't always find a lot of quality humor in animated kids films, but Zootopia's brand of humor is one that repeatedly had me chuckling or full-on laughing out loud. Something that I think this film managed to achieve that very few kid-driven films do is offer a brand of comedy and really a product in general that can appeal to pretty much any age group. There's something comedy-wise and narratively for all ages, and I firmly believe that all great animated kids films have this trait, and Zootopia Zootopia certainly falls under that category. Zootopia grossed over $1 billion worldwide on a $150 million budget, so there's obvious franchise potential here for Disney. So moving on to my number 8 film of 2016, Hacksaw Ridge. Now to be completely honest, I was caught totally off guard by how great this film was. When I saw the first trailer for Hacksaw Ridge, I thought it looked kind of hokey and it seemed like it was going to be the kind of war film that was trying way too hard to be insightful. But in reality, Hacksaw Ridge was easily one of the best films of the year because I walked out of that theater feeling things I haven't felt from a war film since like Saving Private Ryan. The war scenes in this film are some of the best I've ever seen, and dare I say, they rival the war scenes in Saving Private Ryan. They're that good and they feel that grounded in reality. The level of grittiness and brutality that's displayed in this film is so immersive that I couldn't help but be completely shocked and captivated by everything I was seeing on screen. The way these battles unfold on screen are just incredibly impressive, and I cannot emphasize enough how great the cinematography is in this film. This is easily one of the best shot films of the year because everything about Hacksaw Ridge from a visual standpoint is executed at a level that will have you fully immersed into Private Doss's story and this chaotic time and war he finds himself in the middle of. Going into this film, I didn't even know Mel Gibson directed it, to be honest. I saw his name as the credits rolled and was like, oh shit, Mel Gibson delivers another great film. Because a film that I truly love was Mel Gibson's 2006 film, Apocalypto. It's such an underrated movie, and if you have a chance to see it, I strongly recommend you check it out if you haven't already. But I bring up Apocalypto to make the point that I believe Mel Gibson is actually a very good director, and in Hacksaw Ridge, he really further proved to me that he can deliver an experience that is truly great. I'm not gonna lie though, there is inherently a religious message in this film, not just because Mel Gibson is very religious, but because Private Doss himself was. Personally, this didn't bother me because it never felt overly preachy due to the fact that's literally who Desmond Doss was in real life. If the religious overtones were forced into this film, I'd feel differently, but in my opinion, they fit very naturally within the confines of this story. But on the topic of Private Doss, I thought Andrew Garfield's performance is one of the best leading performances of the year, and I fully expected to propel his career to the next level and make him a highly sought after asset. The Private Doss that he portrayed was someone that I think we could all aspire to be like, whether you're religious or not. He's courageous, he's unwavering in his conviction, and he's inspirational to everyone around him. And that's a lead character we can definitely all aspire to be like. Andrew Garfield was the perfect fit for this role, and his performance definitely helped elevate this film to even greater heights. But I was also really impressed by the supporting characters in this film as well. Vince Vaughn showed he can definitely do drama whenever he feels like it. Sam Worthington delivers another strong performance. Hugo Weaving is great as always, and Teresa Palmer's performance was absolutely fantastic. Teresa Palmer is not a super well-known actress, but I feel like she's gonna get some serious attention for her excellent work in Hacksaw Ridge. But overall, Hacksaw Ridge is an excellent, brutal, uplifting, and very emotional film, and honestly, it kinda caught me by surprise with how awesomely it's constructed. I'm very happy it did so well at the box office though, raking in roughly $65 million domestically. Alright, so on to my number 7 film of 2016, Kubo and the Two Strings. Now, I'm of the opinion that Kubo and the Two Strings is an animated masterpiece. I think this film leads the way for animated films and what actually turned out to be one of the best years ever for animation. I think part of what made this film so great for me was just how touching and just how well crafted this story is. It's also one of the most unique stories that I've ever seen from an animated film. This is not one of those formulaic films that's just executed really well. Kubo and the Two Strings offers something else entirely from the recent crop of animated films. First off, the stop motion animation. Now, the company that created Kubo and the Two Strings, Laika, are responsible for other stop motion films like Coraline and Paranorman, but if you've ever seen an animated stop motion film before, it's definitely a bit of a unique experience. The animation in Kubo and the Two Strings is some of the best I've ever seen from an animated film. The landscapes and the characters and just about everything in this film is vibrant and exciting and lends itself to that feeling of adventure that Kubo and the Two Strings is really all about. Because at its core, this story is still about the importance of family and loved ones, but it's still also very much an adventure story where we follow our triage on their quest to find Kubo's father's armor. But in most films, you gradually build a connection with the characters as you watch them travel and adventure and overcome obstacles, but I felt a connection to these characters pretty instantaneously. Sort of similarly to Zootopia, these characters all have very different personalities and traits that make them individuals, and the way they play off one another makes for a lot of really fun adventuring, and also some really cool conversations during the downtime. I thought Art Parkinson, Charlize Theron, and Matthew McConaughey all delivered really good performances that ultimately resulted in me becoming very attached to these three characters and wanting to see them succeed on their quest, because the way the story is paced is actually pretty cool, because it's subtle and gradual. The story builds, and so does the emotion and therefore your investment in these characters and hopefully seeing them succeed. Another element of this film that was fantastic was was the score composed by Dario Marianelli. A good score can make the world of difference for a film because without it, you might not get the full emotional impact of the story or a sense of the environment in which it takes place. But this film's score helps lend to the film's very strong identity and gives you a much better sense of the culture and the world in which the story takes place. It also made the very emotional scenes that much more impactful by hitting you right in the musical feels, for lack of a better description. But overall, I loved Kubo and the Two Strings. It combines a beautiful story about family and adventure with amazing animation, great characters, and awesome music. It actually underachieved a bit at the box office with a domestic gross of $48 million, but hopefully people will buy the Blu-ray or something. Okay, so moving on to my number 6 film of 2016, The Jungle Book. Now, if you've been following this channel for a while, you might have noticed that I don't actually have a review for The Jungle Book uploaded because I started the channel sometime in early May and Jungle Book was released in April. Regardless though, The Jungle Book is definitely one of the best films of the year in my eyes because it somehow managed to take an existing story that most of us know and love and build on it in many ways. The CGI in this film is fantastic, and I've never seen CGI animals look anywhere near as lifelike as they do in this film. The jungle and the animals themselves that inhabit it all look basically photorealistic, and I honestly can't believe that this film has raised the bar so high for future live action films. CGI can make or break a film because if the CGI sucks, then you'll be more focused on how crappy it looks in the story itself. But if it's great like it is in The Jungle Book, it's much easier to immerse yourself into the world in which the story takes place. The attention to detail from the visuals in this film is truly remarkable because sort of like they did in Zootopia, Disney built a jungle that feels lively and dangerous and fun all at the same time. And that's in part due to the surroundings that are like 99% CGI. If you look at the behind the scenes footage, the filmmakers built a little mini studio with some jungle-like qualities, I guess, but almost everything about these environments you see in the film are digitally created and seamlessly meshed with Mowgli himself. And the characters, all of them have such strong identities and they all feel like they serve a true purpose in this story. It helps that these characters were brought to life by some truly remarkable actors because the cast of this film is easily one of the best of the year. I gotta say though, I was so impressed by the work of Idris Elba in this one because Shere Khan was so menacing and scary and was exactly the type of villain that this film needed. Every time he's on screen, he completely steals the show because he keeps you in suspense as to what crazy thing he's gonna do next. I do think that some of his actions might scare small children, so I'm not quite sure how Disney got a PG rating with some of the things that happen in this film, but regardless, I think Shere Khan really raised the stakes so high by being such a menacing villain. But everyone was good. Bill Murray was the perfect actor for Baloo, Neil Sethi was good as our protagonist Mowgli, Ben Kingsley was a great Bagheera, Lupita Nyong'o was a great Raksha, and the list goes on and on. The voice acting and acting in general is great in The Jungle Book, but the casting is just as good. I also thought the music was awesome as well. There's a couple recreated songs mixed in here from the original film, but it never feels overbearing or out of place. There's like a couple songs in the entire film, and they're brief enough to add a little bit of lightheartedness and fun, which was a nice change of pace. But the serious scenes were also heightened by the score composed by John Debney that I felt was true enough to the original, yet also a unique take on the story, which is what I was looking for from the entire film really. Because really at its core, this is Mowgli's adventure, and by the end of the film, I felt like I'd been through ups and downs with these animals that feel 100% real. The Jungle Book is emotional and fun and scary and everything that I hoped it would be, honestly. It stays true to the original in certain ways, but it also adds to the story in others, making it the perfect balance of old and new. You guys probably already know this, but it did extremely well at the box office, making $364 million domestically on a budget of $175 million. On a side note though, I'm actually really excited Jon Favreau is directing the live action Lion King, because after The Jungle Book, I completely trust him to do right by the franchise. Alright, so moving along to my number 5 film of 2016, The Edge of 17. I think The Edge of 17 is really a very simple story when you think about it. What partially made this film so great for me though was how relatable it is. I think a lot of the problems that Haley Steinfeld's character Nadine goes through in this film are problems that almost anyone who was ever a teenager probably experienced at one point or another, regardless of your sex. She struggles with things like finding her identity, making friends, or relating to her peers in general, feeling inadequate, and so on and so on. I think basically everyone experienced at some point in their teenage years these similar problems, and probably still do. I've experienced the exact same problems that Nadine experiences in this film. I think that's partially why it hits so close to home for me in such an impactful way. None of her problems are really gender specific, and I think a lot of male moviegoers should be aware of that, because I think if you just watch the trailer, you might get the impression that it's kind of a chick flick, but in reality it's not. The coming of age genre is starting to become pretty popular because there's just so much potential for drama in these formative years, and while The Edge of 17 doesn't necessarily switch up the formula all that much, it reaches greatness by taking that that formula and cranking the reality factor of the story all the way up to 10. The conversations that take place between the high school kids feel so awkward and genuine, and the film's representation of what high school can actually feel like for the students is perfectly spot on. In these formative years, you feel like every awkward thing you do or say, or everything that goes wrong for you in general, is the end of the world, but in reality it's not. But the characters still display that sky is falling mentality when something goes wrong, and I used to do the exact same thing as a teenager. It's what kids do, because as a teenager, your grasp of the scale and sheer importance of the events unfolding in your life is not all that great, so you think the world is stacked against you, and the characters perfectly relay that same approach. The acting in this film, led by Haley Steinfeld, is very, very good. Haley Steinfeld showed off some serious range as an actress in this film because she's funny, she's dramatic, and she's also likable and relatable. I can already guarantee you guys that she'll be in the running for Best Lead Actress in my awards show coming up because she delivered an extremely memorable performance in The Edge of 17. Woody Harrelson is also really great in this film in limited screen time. He mostly serves as the comic relief and mentor to Nadine as her history teacher, but I honestly didn't know Woody Harrelson could be this funny. It's sort of dry humor, but it's great. Newcomer Hayden Sito is also really awesome in this film. He plays Erwin, Nadine's friend and secret admirer, and he was just a really well-designed character in all his awkwardness. Something else that The Edge of 17 offers that most coming-of-age films don't is quality humor. Now I have to let you guys know that this film is rated R, so the brand of humor is pretty unfiltered. I'm not quite sure why it's really rated R though, because while some of the jokes are a little sexual or explicit in nature, nothing about this film really screams R-rated to me. It's a very light R, I'll just say that. This film isn't insanely funny or anything, but it offers plenty of chuckles throughout. But yeah, I really love The Edge of 17. It's a film with an incredibly relatable and dramatic story, great acting performances, and a really nice brand of unfiltered yet realistic feeling humor. The Edge of 17 didn't perform too well at the box office though, with a total domestic gross of around $14 million, but at least it made its money back. Alright then, so my number 4 film of 2016 is Hell or High Water. Now Hell or High Water was a film that seemingly came out of nowhere. I knew absolutely nothing about it until I saw it had a 98% on Rotten Tomatoes, and then I watched the trailer for it and was like, holy hell, that looks amazing. How did I not hear about this movie? Well, holy hell was right, because this film delivers some of the most thrilling and action-packed scenes of 2016, but never to the detriment of quality character development. This film follows two brothers played by Chris Pine and Ben Foster who are robbing banks in Texas in order to raise a certain amount of money for a certain reason, and two police officers played by Jeff Bridges and Gil Birmingham that are trying to catch the two bank robbing bros. The film jumps back and forth between the two duos as they work against one another, and the way that the multiple storylines of these four characters are weaved together is something really special, because while there are plenty of heist films out there, Hell or High Water felt like a refreshing take or even mixing of the two genres of western and thriller. This is one of those rare heist films with characters that actually have a ton of depth and layers to them. The performances from Chris Pine, Ben Foster, and Jeff Bridges are all Oscar level performances, although I don't think they're all three get nominated because the Academy will likely consider that overkill. But Chris Pine delivered what I believe to be the best performance of his career, and ditto with Ben Foster. And Jeff Bridges is just as great here as he was in the film True Grit, for which he was nominated for an Oscar. Something that you wouldn't exactly expect from a western style thriller like Hell or High Water is very strong dialogue that's often humorous while other times clever and dramatic. While there's certainly plenty of action to go around, a good chunk of this story is told through the conversations that take place between the characters either on the job or in their downtime, and these conversations do a great job of adding additional layers to our main characters and make you care about their well-being. So when they face off against one another, you won't be sure who to root for because both sides have their good intentions, and this adds so much drama and tension to the story because I know for me at least I wanted everything to work out for both of them, but it just really can't play out that way. I'll also say that the environments and landscapes that are shot in this film are so awesome, and they give the film such a strong identity. Everything about the environments and the townspeople who aren't main characters give you that Texas vibe, and the filmmakers made it so easy to jump right into this western heist story. Some of the cinematography in this film is absolutely stunning, and I also got to give credit to the composers Nick Cave and Warren Ellis, who once again deliver another awesome score that really feels and sounds western. But Hell or High Water delivered some amazing cinematography and music, some really well developed and acted characters, and a really fresh feeling or mixing of two genres. It made $27 million domestically at the box office, but I bet if more people knew about the film, it could have done even better. Alright, so moving right along to my number 3 film of 2016, Captain America: Civil War. Now this was easily one of my most anticipated films of the year, if not the most, because you guys probably know by now that I'm a huge fan of Marvel films. Civil War serves as the culmination of all the destruction the Avengers have left in their path in the MCU up to this point. Regardless of of the good they've done in making the world a safer place, politicians and citizens alike are frustrated by what they believe is a lack of accountability among enhanced individuals. So in comes the Sokovia Accords, the MCU version of the Superhero Registration Act, where superheroes are put in check and eventually argue amongst one another on whether they should accept these limitations. What Civil War offers is something that I think a lot of us thought we'd never get in a full dose like this, and that's our beloved superheroes fighting against one another. Marvel has definitely given us smaller doses of this in previous films, especially in the two Avengers films, but nothing on this scale. Usually it's disagreement in heated moments, but nothing like all-out battle against one another like we get in Civil War. And you're kind of put in a position where you have to take sides, and for any Marvel fans like myself that have seen every single film and watched these characters grow and learn and become attached to them, it was hard to watch our heroes violently fight each other. Civil War divides our heroes in a way that we've never seen before from the MCU, and a way that I've never seen from any superhero film ever before. I obviously love all our Marvel heroes, and even though these characters were pretty developed over the previous 12 films, Civil War still manages to teach us something new about each and every one of them, mostly about their values and where their loyalties lie. The Russo brothers are the best directors Marvel has right now, because they delivered us Winter Soldier and now Civil War, which is my second favorite Marvel film ever, and they're doing the huge Infinity War films coming up soon that should be amazingly epic. But although Civil War is different in regards to the nature of its story, it still delivers those iconic Marvel battle scenes, and arguably one of the best battle scenes in any superhero film ever in the airport scene. This scene is just full anarchy and superhero awesomeness for like 15 minutes and sports some of the greatest CGI I've ever seen from a superhero film. There's other fights sprinkled in as well that are also amazingly done, but the airport scene is going to go down in history books as an iconic and all-time great superhero film scene. I would also be remiss if I didn't mention the introduction of my two favorite characters in this film, and that's Black Panther and Spider-Man. I think Chadwick Boseman and Tom Holland were the perfect actors to play these iconic heroes, and I can't wait to see more from the two of them. Their introductions are so well done, and their solo films are going to be great. The last thing I want to mention for Civil War is the ending. It's so bittersweet because our beloved heroes finally stopped fighting one another, but the damage is done. The Avengers are torn apart, and Zemo finally got his wish. I think Civil War succeeds despite its main villain of sorts in Zemo. It felt a little too bland to me, but overall I think Civil War is a great film. Too bad the Academy doesn't ever nominate superhero films for Best Picture, because I think in many people's eyes, Civil War is one of the best films of 2016. At least it made over $400 million domestically at the box office, so I'm sure Marvel is satisfied. Alright, so on to my number 2 film of 2016, Arrival. Arrival was a film I was incredibly hyped for, because I'm a big fan of the sci-fi genre, as well as director Denis Villeneuve, whose name I'm never quite sure if I'm pronouncing correctly, but regardless, I'm of the opinion that Arrival is a sci-fi masterpiece of a film, because it delivers an experience that's great in its own way, and ultimately unlike any other sci-fi film I've ever experienced. I've actually heard from some people that they didn't like Arrival all that much because they thought it was boring, and I think I just want to throw out the disclaimer that this film is not at all like your standard alien invasion film. It's not like War of the Worlds where aliens are taking over Earth and we need to defend ourselves. It actually goes in a much different direction. Arrival is focused on communication and translating language with an unknown alien species. It focuses on how we as humans are afraid of anything that we don't understand, and how even in the most strenuous and dangerous of circumstances possibly, we still have trouble finding common ground, setting aside our differences, and working together towards a common goal. And I mention all this because if you haven't seen Arrival yet and you plan to watch it at some point, you shouldn't expect some full-on alien invasion film, because if you do, you're probably going to be disappointed. Arrival certainly has a handful of really well done action scenes, but the film prides itself on being a fresh and unique take on the sci-fi genre by delivering you a more thoughtful experience that comments on human nature. But transitioning, the cast of Arrival is anchored by Amy Adams in the role of linguist Louise Banks, who delivers one of the best performances of the year. She was as great here as she's ever been, and dare I say this may be the best performance of her career, and that's definitely saying something for Amy Adams, who is widely recognized as a great actress. Her performance in Arrival was pretty damn captivating, and she's the character we follow pretty much throughout. Amy Adams single-handedly raises the quality of this film by delivering a performance that's full of wit and charisma and drama. She puts the movie on her back and leads it to the promised land. The other two key characters in this film are physicist Ian Donnelly, played by Jeremy Renner, and Colonel Weber, played by Forrest Whitaker. Jeremy Renner is really good, albeit in limited screen time, and Forrest Whitaker has a very strong presence as well. I thought Jeremy Renner and Amy Adams worked really well on screen together. They work as a duo to bring their special expertise to deciphering this alien language, and I thought the two played really well off one another. Arrival sports a very small cast of characters, but these characters all contribute mightily to a great final product. Arrival also delivers some of the best cinematography and CGI that I've seen all year. The visual experience that Arrival delivers is very unique, and my jaw was basically dropped the whole movie at the feats this film was pulling off visually consistently. Through various lighting techniques to wide shots of landscapes and ships and so on, Arrival delivers a visual experience that is unlike any other from 2016. I also want to give huge props to Jóhann Jóhannsson for delivering a score that was incredibly effective and moving. There were times it made me feel scared, it made me feel sad, and even adventurous, and his score complemented the on-screen action in a way that just worked beautifully. It's pretty rare that I feel such a wide range of emotions from one composer's work in a film, but Jóhann Jóhannsson somehow managed to pull off an incredible feat. But overall, Arrival is a film that mixes the familiar of the sci-fi genre with its own fresh and unique spin as well. It's anchored by great acting performances, some next-level cinematography and CGI, and a crazy good score by Jóhann Jóhannsson. Arrival is a sci-fi masterpiece, and I'm thrilled it made roughly $94 million domestically at the box office, basically doubling its production costs. Okay, so now for my #1 film of 2016, can we get a drum roll please? La La Land. La La Land was such an unexpected joy for me in almost every way, because personally, I'm not a huge fan of musicals, because in a lot of musicals, I end up feeling like the characters breaking into song and dance sort of sucks me out of the story because it feels unrealistic. But La La Land is truly an all-time great film for me because it somehow manages to take that musical aspect and flawlessly weave it into a very touching romance story in a way that never feels forced. The music in this film is incredibly touching and really adds quite a bit to this beautiful romance story on which La La Land lays its foundation. I think what's equally impressive to the music composed by Justin Hurwitz is the choreography for the actual music scenes. It's freaking amazing and incredibly impressive, especially the opening scene, which seems like it would have taken months to plan. A lot of these musical scenes look like they were done in one long shot, and I have no idea how the filmmakers pulled it off in such a flawless way. For someone who doesn't really enjoy musicals that much, the choreography and music in general just floored me with how overwhelmingly good it is. But the single best aspect of La La Land is the romance story itself. Emma Stone and Ryan Gosling have the perfect on-screen chemistry with one another, and maybe that's because this is the third time they've been lovers in a film before, but either way, this love story felt very special to me. They inspire, they motivate, and they nurture one another in a way that's incredibly admirable and just beautiful. This is the kind of love that I think everyone is searching for, and it's like a breath of fresh air to watch something so beautiful play out on the big screen. The filmmakers somehow managed to make it feel like a fantasy world or a La La Land and still ground it in reality at the same time by having the two lovers face and overcome adversity and work together to overcome their differences. These two are struggling artists that are exactly what the other needs at this specific time in their life to help them grow, and Emma Stone and Ryan Gosling are just two great actors at the top of their game. And another thing that made La La Land such a touching story is the fact that it has the ability to inspire anyone who's ever tried to chase a dream or simply felt like they weren't good enough. This story mixes fantasy with reality in a way that deeply affected my emotions because it hit home for me in a lot of ways, and it also provided this really creative fantasy world as well. The visual feats that La La Land pulls off are also incredibly impressive because they incorporate various lighting and composition techniques to a very dramatic effect. The cinematography and lighting work in this film is unlike any that I've personally ever seen before, and it was really something to just marvel at. It really helped focus your attention where it needed to go, and it enhanced the drama and romance of the story, and it just felt incredibly artistic and unusually great. I think Damien Chazelle is quickly becoming one of the elite directors in the game right now because he delivered Whiplash and now La La Land, and he might not even have reached his full potential yet. The amount of work that had to go into planning and making this film had to be insane, and he's definitely in the running for Best Director of 2016 because he led the way in what turned out to be an amazing experience. As of now, La La Land has grossed roughly $51 million domestically, but it's still going strong at the box office, so that number should continue to rise. So real quick, here are some honorable mentions of films that were also very good but just barely missed the cut. Moana, The Birth of a Nation, Deepwater Horizon, Rogue One, A Star Wars Story, Jackie, and Deadpool. There's certainly other good ones that could be listed as well, but for time's sake, I'll leave it at that. Okay, so if you stuck with me through all that, then I really appreciate it, and I just wanted to thank all of you for taking the time to watch this and my other videos. I'm extremely grateful for all the support you provided me and this channel in general. So as we wrap up, let me know in the comments what you thought of my top 10 films of the year selections. Where do you agree? Where do you disagree? Comment below and share your top 10 films of 2016 so we can discuss them all together. And as always, if you like this video, click that like button and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for much more content like this. That's all for now though. This is WillFoxification signing off. I'll see you guys in the next video.